Good morning and welcome back to the Liverpool Daily News. I'm James Martin and today I'm joined by Dave Comerford. And we've got another match to preview. They seem to be coming thick and fast at the moment. I suppose that'll be the case all the way up to the World Cup now. But Nottingham Forest on the horizon and a chance to make it 3 Premier League wins on the bounce, Dave. Just how big would that be?
It'd be huge, and obviously, it'd be 5 out of 6 in all competitions as well. And I guess you could say the change of system would start to look like a bit of a sort of changing of the whole season in a way, if it yields that kind of upturn in results straight off the bat. So it does feel big, and also just in terms of Liverpool's away record this season. It's a fixture that we absolutely have to win based on the gulfing quality between the sides and the situation we find ourselves in at the moment. So I think it's big on a few different fronts, but it would certainly feel like the basically the turnaround seems to be gaining like momentum with every kind of result at the moment, but you're still not entirely sure whether things have completely changed. So each result gives you more confidence, and hopefully the weekend's more of the same in that regard.
Yeah, it's a strange one. We had the same with West Ham earlier in the week where, on paper it wouldn't be a massive fixture, but a win was just so crucial to sort of build on that momentum we'd started to gain at Man City and I suppose at Rangers in the Champions League as well. So more of the same against Nottingham Forest. Again, a game that Liverpool would be expected to win easily when they were, at their untouchable best. And I mean, of course, they'll still be going into it as strong favourites, but yeah, it sort of has that added significance, that added importance. But there'll be some familiar faces as well. I mean, Liverpool know Nico Williams well. They perhaps know Taiwo Awoniyi a little bit less well than they should do. But there's some former Liverpool players in there. Steve Cooper as well. He's a good manager who Liverpool also have some experience of. So there's players in there who can do some damage, aren't there?
Yeah, you'd say so. I think, based on what I've been kind of reading from Forest before the game, the approach is very much going to be sit back and go for counter-attacks, even more so than it would have been at the start of the season. I think Cooper's kind of a coach who wants to be maybe more aggressive in his game plan, but has maybe recognised in the circumstances that he does need to maybe peel it back, go back to basics a little bit. But yeah, I mean, the thing with Forest is, especially with other players they signed, they've got a lot of kind of impressive names in there. It's just a case of, when can they get the best out of them, basically, and how long is that going to take, and how much damage would have been done up to that point. I think Williams is a very interesting one because if you kind of look through the metrics at Forest, I think he's kind of very high up in terms of sort of touches, shots, chances created. So he's going to be very heavily involved in the game. And Awoniyi is a bit more of a puzzling one, I'd say, because I think he's been on the bench, late substitute for the past couple of games. You watched him at the start of the season, I think he's got a couple of goals under his belt, but he's also missed some very big chances. So obviously he'll have extra motivation for this game. But yeah, it's one of them where the team, I wouldn't say, is quite the sum of its parts yet in terms of the individuals that they have at their disposal, but they certainly do have dangerous players that Liverpool has to be wary of.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. I think it's one of them where if everything came together for them on the day, then they might be able to cause some problems, but that hasn't happened too much so far. Although the cynical Liverpool fan might say that it's destined to happen against us, but hopefully not. And yeah, the West Ham win will help in that regard, in the sense that the momentum is a little bit less fragile than it otherwise might have been. Kumar says Forest game is going to be tricky, but everything will depend on how we start the game. If we score first tomorrow, we're going to score 3 or 4 goals. I tend to agree with that. I think that first goal issue is crucial. Of course, this season Liverpool have been going behind more often than not. Do you think that a quick start is going to be the key tomorrow?
Well, I guess you've got to look at it and say, record-wise this season, that we've basically seen a massive correlation between Liverpool scoring first and Liverpool getting the results at the end of it. And obviously that isn't surprising, but I guess it shows how difficult we're finding it to kind of come back when we have those starts, as opposed to maybe the side of sort of 1920 Liverpool's heyday, when it almost felt inevitable that Liverpool would be able to turn the game around. So I definitely think that is the case. And especially tomorrow, I think the fact that it's a 12:30 kickoff means the atmosphere won't be as good as it would be maybe in other slots. But we know that for Forest, this is one of the biggest games. This is one of the games they would have been looking forward to most after they got promoted back to the Premier League. And as a result of that, I think there could be kind of a fast start from them potentially. So, whether that, and especially if you can get a goal yourself, then it will already feel like a long way back for them for sure.
And one of the talking points in the lead up to the game is that Naby Keita has been pictured in training. We already have a debate raging in the comments about Naby, as seems to be the case whenever he's a topic of discussion. I think in terms of, the Klopp era, he might just be the most enigmatic player we've had. Because, I think most people now recognise his quality when he's available. And, on his day, he can put in an absolute masterclass in that midfield. But the question is always about that availability. The first comment we had today was, I bet Naby will injure himself in training alongside Ox. Nothing new here. And it's harsh, but that has sort of been the story of his Liverpool career, hasn't it?
It has. I was kind of thinking about this morning just before we came on the stream, and I don't think Liverpool fans are going to know how to feel about Keita coming back into the side, to be honest, because we saw for parts of last season how good he was, and you mentioned it there, James, but I think there's a real now sort of clamp almost on any optimism that you can feel around him, because it's just like, when is almost the next injury going to be? And in fairness, last season was much better on the injury front. I think, just off the top of my head, I've got a feeling he kind of got around 40 appearances or something like that, or certainly played the most amount of Premier League games he had since his first season, I believe. So that was much more encouraging. But the way this season started, I think he was already about to come back from an injury, then he got injured again. I think a lot of people gave up on him at that point. But the Liverpool that he sort of left, if you like, for that injury is now quite different to the one that we've got now, because, and I think this is a really intriguing point, the system has changed, and you look at it and you almost divide the midfield into who this might suit and who it won't. I think it might actually suit Naby Keita, because I was just looking beforehand when he was in that sort of last season at Leipzig, definitely potentially before that too. He was playing in a midfield too for them, because I think they were playing a sort of 4-2-2 formation. And also the way he played last season, covering for Thiago, and maybe that more reserved central midfield role, as opposed to the one on the right-hand side with a bit more attack and license, suggests to me that he could actually be able to thrive in that midfield too, and carry out the defensive responsibilities and disciplined aspect of that role quite well. So I think there's an opportunity to be had for him within this new system. But as always, it is going to come down to how long he can stay fit for.
Yeah, it's an interesting point about the system. We've got a piece up on Liverpool.com actually from Josh Williams comparing the sort of Liverpool change to what Keita was used to at RB Leipzig. I think he was playing in that too. You mentioned there with Diego Dema a lot of the time. Maybe, there's some similarities to Fabinho there. So potentially, yeah, there's the possibility that could reinvigorate him a little bit. But yeah, it's so tricky. I was guilty last season of thinking that he'd put the problems behind him. I was very much on board on the Keita train for not the first time, but it always seems that the momentum doesn't last long. Like you say, last season was about as good as it got. I think he did just about surpass his minutes record from his first season. It was close, but I think in the end, that last game that he played took him over. But yeah, this season it's been more of the same. I think all we've seen of him is that cameo in the Community Shield. But yeah, I think it's a good point you make in terms of fans not really knowing how to feel about getting him back. It's the midfield needs strengthening. So, I'm just looking at some of the comments now. We've had Bruce saying Kate's a very important player for Liverpool. His quality, unfortunately, he's rarely available. On the one hand, you wouldn't argue with that, because when he is fit, he is quality. But can you be a really important player when you play the amount of games he does? Maybe not. Someone else says we won't notice him when he leaves, just for the same reason. So, such a divisive player. But yeah, if it's so hard to even know how to talk about him, because everything you have to caveat with if he stays fit, and you sort of know he won't. But yeah, it's a good point about the system. Maybe as well, do you think there's a chance that sort of takes the load off him a little bit? You mentioned that it's a slightly more kind of withdrawn role, a little bit less all action. I suppose the very early signs of Thiago might be able to have some of the load taken off him in this system as well. Do you think maybe that could apply to Keita as well, and sort of fend off the injuries a little bit more?
I think we saw last season, to a degree, those two players rotating on kind of the left-hand side of that midfield. I think it's a shame that Artur got injured, because then you could have had sort of 3 players, I think, who could have carried out that role. The 2 of them will probably have to split it between them now, you'd say, during kind of that rotation that's already there with Fabinho and Henderson. So that's a possibility. And also, I guess the thing you got to keep considering with Keita is, he's playing for his future now at the club. I think as it stands, Liverpool won't give him a new deal. But if now the run between now and the end of the season is similar to what we saw in 21-22, then that conversation becomes a little bit more complicated. So, yeah, it's all kind of a bit uncertain at the moment, and it's definitely a huge period for Keita. You feel like he simply can't afford any more layoffs at this point. And I know we've probably said that in the past, but this time his contract is the big factor.
Yeah, it's a tricky one for the club because, I mean, I think most people probably are now at the point where they'd not have any qualms with him being let go. But then equally, even with the injuries, you'd still have him as maybe a 15, 20 million pound player were it not for the contract situation. So I suppose the temptation is to give him a new deal, and then if they want to get rid, then try and sell him. But I mean, the club have done that before with Nat Phillips most recently, and he's still here. So I suppose they don't want to be in a situation, particularly with a slightly higher earner, where they've given him a new deal to protect his value, and then he just sort of gets stuck on the books. So I think the comment that sums it up here is, I'm not really concerned about next season. We'll reset in the summer, but while he's still a Liverpool player, we need him fit. And I think that's fair enough. I mean, there's no point bemoaning his injury record too much. He's here until the end of the season, barring an unlikely sale in January, I suppose. But yeah, I suppose the question has to be, can he contribute this season if he's fit? And I think we would both agree, yes, he probably can. The midfield needs extra numbers quite badly. He's a very good midfielder. So, yeah, it can only be good news that he's back in training, right?
Yeah, and the thing is as well, we're almost so used to Keita being injured now that I guess the club is sort of wise to cope with it. They haven't placed too much kind of stock in Keita, so it feels like a bonus when he's available. And then if he does get injured, then you're just like, well, we've been here before. We already have other options almost to cater for this possibility, I suppose. So, yeah, that's how I think it's a positive way of looking at it, and that's probably how I view it.
Yeah, I think that's fair enough. It's not like Thiago where Liverpool sort of built around him and then he's out and no one's quite sure what to do anymore. So yeah, I think definitely it's a positive. And I think there's lots of positives, which maybe we couldn't have said on the stream a couple of weeks ago. Things that are looking up for Liverpool, a chance to make it 3 Premier League wins on the bounce. And like you say, 5 out of 6 in all competitions tomorrow. Huge game. Someone in the comments who's got a Forest friend who's been torturing him since the season, since they came back up. So hopefully he gets a chance to get some bragging rights. Hopefully Liverpool get a chance to move one step closer to that top 4, now only 4 points away. So yeah, I mean, positivity, it's all looking good. Be sure to keep up the momentum and be sure you guys to just check out all of our content on liverpool.com and on the Blood Red channel. We'll be keeping you up to date with everything. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Not my smoothest roundup of all time, but you get the gist. And please do join us again for more morning streams. Thank you very much.